Hey friends, this is Marilyn from Tarot Clarity. As some of you may recall from the other day, I'm not wearing sunglasses suddenly because I think I'm cool or anything. It's because this ice, this snow has not melted and it's really bright and there's a lot of sun, so it triggers headaches for me, so that's why. In the past couple of days, I've been thinking a lot about Amelia Earhart. Now, the reason is because I just have a lifelong interest in her story. My mother was alive when she took flight. My mother was just a little girl, but she may not have been cognizant in 1937. She was born in 35, but she grew up hearing stories about Amelia Earhart, and she put them in my head too. Now, of course, the way we build up our heroes, they're just human beings and they have foibles just like the rest of us. And the more that I've learned about Amelia Earhart through the years, the more I realize that she was probably a person who took advantage of the situation, that there were not a lot of women who were able to be navigators who had a voice. I mean, there were a lot of women who were navigating, particularly, I think, women of color, but they weren't getting a voice and they weren't being seen. And, I guess Amelia had money and the means and the ear of prominent people to have a platform. And so she, was able to create a myth about herself. But bear in mind, she did have a navigator with her, Fred Noonan. So she wasn't maybe an expert navigator. Now, before anyone criticizes me for criticizing Amelia Earhart for maybe not being the legend that we all thought she was Lindbergh. I mean, Lindbergh was a horror, right? He was a horror. Indications suggest he could have been responsible for the unaliving of his own child. Okay, so I'm not criticizing Amelia Earhart, to that level. I'm just saying that, she maybe wasn't the supreme navigator that we all thought she was. However, it does look as though she properly managed a landing on what was then known as Gardner Island. And there's that, right? Like, nobody else landed that plane. She landed that plane. So there's that. Now, in the descriptive areas of some of my videos, and I know most of the time I just will credit the deck that I use. Sometimes I just don't get into talking about stuff. But sometimes, every now and then, in the descriptive area of a video, I'll give more information than I shared in the video because I just didn't think of it during the reading, okay? Now, one of the interesting things that I remember learning a long time ago is that there was a particular teenager in Florida. Her name was Betty. I don't remember her last name. And she picked up communication or transmission or whatever the technical term is from somebody she believed was Amelia Earhart at the time that this was all going down in 1937. And she sat by her whatever kind of radio machine it was, and she wrote down every single solitary thing she heard until it stopped. She heard a man and a woman talking. She heard coordinates, which she wrote down, which perfectly align with Gardner Island. It's an atoll. And what else is she kept writing down that Amelia Earhart, or the woman, was saying that they were near the Norwich City, which the girl, didn't realize was the name of a ship that went down in the atoll, and she wrote it down as New York City. So there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that suggests that Amelia and Noonan landed at that atoll. Now, the reading that I did, the last reading that I did, at the last minute, I saw things more clearly. When I asked, will the April 26 expedition, which was scheduled for November of last year, but it was postponed due to whatever, will the matter be cleared up? And the first card out of the gate, and all the cards in the reading suggest, yeah, it'll be cleared up. We'll know. We'll have we'll have a substantially realistic picture of what went down. But the purpose of the expedition this April of 2026 is to find the airplane, because Purdue University, their team believes they have found like radar or sonograms or whatever it is that indicates that there's a plane compatible with the dimensions or whatever of the Lockheed Electra, that Lockheed 10 Electra, something like that, that Amelia Earhart was flying. Now, there are some experts who say, they're just going to find a coconut tree, that's all it is, which may be true. It's also a possibility, since the SS Norwich City went down at the atoll, isn't it possible that the vessel that kept popping up in my reading, maybe the vessel that they'll find will be the SS Norwich, which was known to have gone down there and disappeared. But at the end of the reading, it really looked like, from yesterday, the one that I did, it really looked like the quintessential card being the temperance card, looked like the stirring up of water. It came to me like in a flash, the stirring up of water. The fortitude card, meaning a lot of force, a lot of energy, right? The chariot card appeared, and I forget what other cards were there that really, and the 10, which looked like was it a 10? There was something that looked like the shape of a boat and protecting something, or a ship or vessel, So it really looked like something was going to be dredged up. But then, is it her flying ship, or is it the SS Norwich just coming back to surface? So I'm going to be sitting there, really I really am interested to know. I'm really interested to know, and I'll keep you posted on that. Hopefully it happens in April as planned, and we'll see what we see. Okay, now for this reading, I'm using, where's the box? I'm using the Spanish Tarot. It's already over here. Now, I had mentioned yesterday that I thought the Tarot Classic was my first TDM deck. Well, this is probably my first proper TDM deck, where the names are not like Hierophant and High Priestess kind of stuff. Now, I did have to repurchase this deck. This was one of the earliest decks I had that was, along with the Tarot Classic. But I used it to death, and I have a feeling, I can tell by the box that this isn't like the original one that I had, and I do remember replacing a few decks. I remember placing the Fournier, the colorful one, because sometimes, these decks are old, and I had 3 kids, and I used to go to events, and I traveled across country a few times, and sometimes cards got lost at an event, or in the packing and stuff, like a card got loose and got ruined or whatever. So I did have to replace a few decks. And I think this is one that I had to replace, but it's a great deck. I don't know. Rumor has it that it was was based on a deck from 1736, and rumor has it that Eudes Picard. And I say rumor because I can't prove it, but it just seems like it comes up a few times, that Eudes Picard based his Triumph cards on the same deck that this deck is based on, from 1736. I forget the name, but it was an Italian deck. So I want to ask a question regarding the regime. Let me articulate it. I'll be right back. Okay, it's not exactly about the regime. I guess the whole point of bringing up the whole Amelia Earhart, and maybe she wasn't the hero that we thought she was. Certainly Lindbergh wasn't. And if anybody should be criticized for being a hero, it's him, And through the years, things get uncovered as documents get uncovered, declassified. We learn that the human beings behind the hero myths, they had their shortcomings. But it's had me thinking, with this regime, how corrupt they are. And the way things have always been, we never saw this coming, As a kid growing up, I remember my parents having conversations, and sometimes they would say, well, you can't always trust everything you see and hear. But for the most part, I think we all understood that there were behind the scene deals, and, one party had to acquiesce to the other party because they wanted their support, so they would do something that was not popular with their delegates. But it was never anything that we would find out about that were so extreme or so dark until probably the last 50 years. And there were things that were surfacing about what went on, and I'll say with previous Republican presidents, and the best they could ever get on like a Democratic president was like a sex scandal with a willing woman, and that poor woman's, her name was pulled through the mud. And I agree that she was taken advantage of as a younger person and a person in a subservient role. There's no question about that. I mean, he was a man of power, BC, and I'm not downplaying him being, whatever. I'm not downplaying that he took advantage of the situation. But so did Kennedy, in even a bigger way, And I think so do most men in positions of power. In some cases, most husbands, right? So, not all. I think both of my husbands were good men in that regard. But it's a pretty commonplace kind of thing. But now the corruption is so much in our face, and it's so blatant. And then there's layers and layers and layers and layers, and we're going back and back and back and back. And now it's like we're questioning every single solitary thing that comes out. Even when we go to vote for a politician who says he's a Democrat, at this stage, I mean, I don't even hold a whole lot of respect for all the Democrats either, please, because they're still trying to find common ground. There is no common ground. You're either against this and for something completely different. There's no common ground. We have to meet them halfway. We met them halfway at the Civil War, and look at where we are today, okay? We let them erect, their treasonous statues and wave their flags, that are Confederate. We did all that. We gave them all that, and it just festered and festered and festered and festered until we are here where we are today. So there's no common ground. We have to have new ground, and you're either part of this new ground stuff or you're not. So any, Democrat who calls himself a Democrat and still wants to do something between party lines or makes, don't vote for them, But in recent years, I know in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania, because my state borders on Pennsylvania, there have been two senators who ran as Democrats. We just voted for them. In Pennsylvania, they voted for Fetterman. Well, he's in Trump's pocket. I said his name, excuse me. He's in who's pocket. And then we voted for a guy named Van Drew here in Jersey. Man, the ink wasn't off the ballots yet when Van Drew flipped and became a Republican, and he was all along. So what I'm saying is, before we vote and we look at these Democratic Party people, we have to do our own due diligence and make sure where they came from and their own background. Okay? Because they know they're going to lose. They know they're going to lose 2026 elections. They know it. So I think more than ever, they may masquerade themselves as Democrats to get the votes. So we have to be careful. We have to be very careful. So I want to know, for the 2026 elections, what kind of shenanigans will happen? How will the 2026 elections go? And what will we learn about some of the candidates, particularly those who belong to the Republican Party or masquerade as something they're not in order to advance the Republican Party? Alrighty. What will the 2026 elections uncover? How will they go? Now, in prior readings for politics, and I kind of have this understanding with the universe, so I want to mention it to you before I lay the cards, and then you think I'm conveniently designating them. I think of swords and coins as conservative, right-leaning, and I see batons and water as more conservative, compassionate, being more of the people. So I just want to put that out there, okay? So we want to know who's going to win and what things will surface. How's that? We have the star card, so that's a card of navigation in the context of the question. It could mean something else depending on what else is laid down, but it's hopeful, right? One of the key words for the star is hopeful. I do apologize for the tape, but there have been evangelics who have been perusing tarot channels to get us on doing the devil's work, and since YouTube isn't having that, they now do the, vulgarity kind of thing, so I've already been reported once, so we have to cover ourselves and be careful. Okay, so we have navigation, okay, and now we have 2 cups. Well, that's a good sign, right? 2 of cups. Let's hope there's no fire next to it. And we have the moon. So we have the 2 of cups flanked by enlightenment and stuff happening under cover of night, right? Or stuff going down in the dark. Or individuals taking advantage of others. And enlightenment and hope and navigating our way through. I'm sorry I fiddle with the cards so much. I just want to make sure we can see them all. Okay, here we have a card of the people. So we have cups and we have batons. And it's 7. So it's the 7 doing what the people doing what they got to do, moving toward an 8, 9, and 10. So moving toward completion. The people understand the assignment. We understand the assignment. What falls in the front and center of the core 9? Oh, the Ace of Coins. This is, the regime. This is the regime, front and center of the core 9. It's all about beating them. Really, right? They may have some growth. They may have some momentum. We fall under enlightenment. They fall under deception. Interesting. And they move toward deception. If you notice that the pyramid is facing that way, the point of the coins is facing that way. We have the whole world. Could mean a few things in the context of this question. Again, we have stability of the people. And we have them holding on to their precious agenda. Now, the majority of cards are of the people. 1, 2, 3. Well, no, there's 3 of them as well. I stand corrected. I apologize for making that mistake. So it could be up for grabs. It could be dicey in some cases. It does seem like they make a power grab, and it does seem that the power grab they make is inclined to be deceptive. They're desperately trying to hold on to their own agenda. But the people do come out, and the people do seem to establish some type of stability. Let's figure the quintessential cards to see what other enlightenment we can find. I think many times when there's a vaguity or vagueness. If there's, I know there's a word like vaguity, but I can't think of what it is. If anybody knows what it is, please put it down below. But there's when there's a vague understanding of the core nine for me, that's one of the reasons I just love, and one of the reasons that I decided coming up with like quintessential cards for a spread was to really give direction and hope. So let me pull those. I'll be right back. Oh dear. So we see the quint cards are all repetitive. We have a devil card for the top row and the quint for the entire spread, and we have 2 4-2 cards. So I had to pick the additional quint cards from, I chose Fournier's Tarot of Marseille. Also, one of the earliest decks, TDM decks I had that I had to replace. This is a newer version. Okay, so let me look. Here we have, obvious corruption. So there will be corruption involved. I don't think anybody really doubts that. This is a breastplate. Please don't ping me. It's a breastplate, not a boob. Okay. Hold on, just in case somebody is sick in the head, let me cover it. I really am sorry that I have to do stupid stuff like that, but there are stupid people. Okay, so we have corruption, and in the context of the question, there's also aggression. So it's not only going to be some underhandedness, but I think there will be some that's in our face and that we can visually see it, and it will be reported on. If we look at the quintessential card for the entire spread, which by design falls with this row, and we look at the front and center of the core 9 card, which I identified when I laid it as the regime, right? And we have this combination. So the corruption is more of the same from the same individuals that we expect to see it from, as is the aggression. So I think, what this suggests to me at our polling areas, if we vote by ballot, corruption there will be that things will be intercepted. I already know last year that my presidential vote was lost for 3 weeks until it surfaced, okay? Get those ballots in the day you get them. You get them, you fill it out, and don't mail it. Don't even mail it. Take it to the drop-off, right? And you have to personally put your own. You can't let your husband do it for you. You can't let your wife do it for you, because they'll get you on stuff like that. And if you can go into the place rather than putting it in their box, which could be, something can happen to those drop boxes, right? So take it in and hand deliver it. If you can only take it to the post office, take it, wait in line, do what it takes to have it stamped, and don't leave until you see them stamp it. But it's preferable to take it to the location where it will be counted, to the county seat or whatever it is. If you're waiting in line because you vote in person, man, take a little folding chair if you need to, because who knows how ugly it'll get. Take enough bottled water if you're waiting for 2 or 3 hours, and in some cases the cold or the heat. You got to do what you got to do. And I think we all have to take this very seriously and do what we got to do, because I think there will definitely be aggression and deception big time regarding these elections. And I don't think we're at all surprised to hear who it might be, right? More of the same from the party that wants to hold on to and protect their agenda. Big time protection. That's a deep, thick barrier with a tiny little prize in the middle, right? Because they're the people, right? The people, if we look at this, have seen their way. They know what they got to do. They've come together. They have, I think, the rest of the world is in favor of those of us who want to see him toppled, right? We have the whole world looking at us, I think we have that, and I think it also means we have their support because we want to bring stability to the people. But they will be aggressive. They will be very aggressive and as corrupt as ever to hold on to their teeny tiny little, agenda. And we got to do what it takes because they don't care how corrupt they look. It doesn't matter to them. Do you think they care? They don't hide the corruption. They just do it and say, "Oh yeah, you all voted for this." So they don't hide it. They God only knows. God only knows what we don't know. But this card doesn't necessarily mean stuff will. It definitely just shows deception or trickery. Corruption and aggression. I think that pretty much nails it. More of the same, everybody. Until next time. My motto is show up, speak up, and vote. I hope it becomes a catch-all for 2026. Until next time. All that. Bye.